I don't have any details or background elements that will add to this scene at all, so I decide to make the purpose of this page purely about the dialogue. So here I am having a dialogue here between two characters, and I'm using that 4-panel format that I used over here. And finally, there'll be times where you don't even need to separate the template into panels. And that doesn't have to be the case all the time. Sometimes you just want to establish the setting and characters and show them off in a cool way. And sometimes you need more than just a few panels to do so. You need the entire page. So in this example here, that's exactly what I do. I show off the shape of the characters and create a larger sort of piece for the reader to enjoy. At this point, I don't even need to include dialogue, but sometimes I can. As in this example here, I use an entire page to show off these two new characters, and I still include dialogue here as well. So your project for this lesson is to figure out the purpose for your page. You don't have to decide what panels you plan to use or the composition just yet. We'll be talking about the different types of panels in the next lesson and composition and balance later on. But it's an important step in storytelling to figure out exactly what you want to tell the reader. If you have any questions about deciding the purpose of your page, let me know in the comments below. As an active instructor, you will receive an answer as soon as I see your question. With that, let's jump straight into the next lesson, where we will be talking about the different panels that you can use to create an interesting comic. Comics and what panels and shapes that I use for particular scenes. So to start, I'm going to be taking the template that I've shown you earlier, and in this template I'm going to be breaking it down into different panels so that way you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. Now the most basic format is one of the first formats that was used in Western comics. The reason this was used in the old comics is because there wasn't that much attention to detail. They're moving on from comic strips into something that was a bit grander, because they wanted to create more annual releases of their comic strips, and they wanted to make sure they expanded upon those comics into full-blown comics. That meant multiple panels, that meant a longer story, that meant a bit more jokes and a bit more opportunity to show off one's art. Now this is still a format that is used in webcomics and comics and graphic novels, just not every page. The advantage of using such a simple layout is that each panel is the same size and it's easier to follow the sequence of thought. For example, they will start here in the first panel, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So the reader can follow the story. And let's just put a basic stickman figure walking, and you want to have a lot of dialogue maybe, and you want to flow that into the next. If your scene has a lot of vertical elements, or you want to do something different from a previous page, this is a great shape to work with. Of course, that does bring us to horizontal panels, and like with vertical panels helping to emphasize verticality in an image, horizontal ones will created with a practical reason in mind. Comics were of course physically printed and not read digitally at first, which meant that they needed the bottom and sides, as well as a thicker space to separate the panels. The same applies to my other webcomic, where I have a very clear space between panels in order to separate the scenes. And if you are working with a comic strip, the same applies. There is a space between each panel that I have here. With that said, I can give you some practical advice if you are using the template which I have provided.